For centuries, people preserved meat through the dead of winter without a single watt of electricity. And the technique they used doesn't just still work today. It creates the most expensive, sought-after hams on the planet. Salt, smoke, and a hole in the ground. That was the entire playbook. And if you understand the science behind why a cellar stays 34 degrees when it's 10 below zero outside, you'll realize the grid was never actually necessary. But there is one safety rule you cannot afford to get wrong, and ignoring it doesn't spoil your meat. It stops your breathing. Stay with me. This is the method that kept meat fresh all winter long before electricity. Not a primitive hack. The exact same chemistry that produces a $2,000 prosciutto. And right now, with supply chains fragile and homesteading surging, thousands are reviving it. But there is one mistake that turns a perfect cure into a neurotoxin. You need to know what it is before you touch salt. Salt has been preserving meat since 3000 BC. Sumerian cooks packed cooked meat into sesame oil and salt, not knowing the chemistry. They only knew it worked. By 200 BC, Roman soldiers marched across Europe with salt-cured pork in their packs. The salt did two things. It pulled water out of the meat through osmosis, and it created an environment where spoilage bacteria cannot survive. Dehydration plus high salinity equals a hostile place for anything that rots, and that simple equation built empires, fueled navies, and turned salt into a commodity more valuable than gold. But the real breakthrough wasn't pure salt. It was the impurities. For thousands of years, people unknowingly used salt that contained nitrates, natural contaminants in sea salt, and mined rock salt. Those nitrates, converted by bacteria into nitrites, did something pure sodium chloride alone cannot do. They stopped the deadliest pathogen in preserved meat, Clostridium botulinum. Homer's Greece in 850 BC was already using salt with nitrates to preserve meat, and nobody knew why it worked. They only knew that when you used certain salts, sailors didn't die. Fast forward to the American homestead. Root cellars kept temperatures steady at 34 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Farmers would salt-cure hams in a wooden box, burying the meat completely in salt for days, then hang them in the cellar's cool, humid darkness. The process pulled moisture down to a point where even mold struggled to grow. A properly cured ham could last 2 years without refrigeration. The same technique produces Serrano ham and prosciutto di Parma today, hams that sell for thousands of dollars apiece. The difference between those artisan products and a homesteader's winter meat supply is just time and airflow. But here is what nobody told you, and it's why I stopped you before you touched the salt. When you cure meat at home, you create the perfect conditions for a microbe that thrives without oxygen, inside a dense ham, sealed by a pellicle of smoke and salt. Clostridium botulinum spores survive boiling, survive freezing, do not need air, and produce a toxin so lethal that 1 gram could kill 14,000 people. The only thing that stops it in cured meat is sodium nitrite. That is the pink curing salt, Prague powder number 1. And when the USDA finally authorized its use in 1925, the botulism cases from commercially cured ham stopped entirely. 0 cases in a century. But here is where the revival movement is making a mistake that could kill someone. Thousands of home curers are posting videos right now using only sea salt, skipping the pink salt because they heard it's a chemical. And they are setting a trap they cannot see. I need to show you exactly what happens inside that meat when the salt is wrong, and why the man who mapped this danger did not live to see his work become public. Let me show you what happens inside that meat when the pink salt is missing. You pack a fresh ham in sea salt. The salt draws out moisture that is working perfectly. But deep inside the muscle, where oxygen cannot reach, spores of Clostridium botulinum are waiting. They survived the slaughter. They survived the salt. They even survived boiling. If you were to heat it, they are dormant and they are patient. If the temperature stays above 38 degrees and the salt concentration inside the meat does not rise fast enough, those spores germinate. Bacteria multiply. They begin producing a neurotoxin that has no taste, no odor, no visible sign. The meat looks perfect. It smells like cured ham. 12 hours after you eat it, your vision doubles, your throat locks, your diaphragm stops moving, and 1 gram of that toxin could kill 14,000 people. The man who mapped this danger was a Belgian bacteriologist named Emile van Ermengen. In December 1895, a funeral was held in the village of Elazels. 30 musicians and guests ate smoked ham from a local farm. Within 36 hours, 23 of them fell critically ill. 3 died. Van Ermengem examined the leftover ham under a microscope and found a rod-shaped bacterium that thrived without oxygen. He isolated the toxin, injected it into laboratory animals, and watched them die from identical paralysis. He named the organism Bacillus botulinus, from the Latin word botulus, meaning sausage, because of earlier outbreaks in Germany's blood sausages. He published his findings in 1897. He mapped exactly how the microbe needed low oxygen, low acidity, and insufficient salt to weaponize meat. Then the meat industry buried his paper for 3 decades. In the United States, commercial canneries and meat packers lost customers to botulism outbreaks repeatedly. It was not until 1925 that the USDA finally authorized sodium nitrite as a curing agent. Overnight, the death rate from commercially cured ham dropped to 0. Not a single case of botulism from a properly nitrite-cured ham has been reported since. 0. For 100 years. The science is settled. Sodium nitrite penetrates the meat, converts nitric oxide, and permanently disables the botulinum spore's ability to produce toxin. That is the pink salt. That is Prague powder number 1. And that is what thousands of home curers are leaving out of their recipes right now, because they read on an online forum that it is a chemical poison. But here is the part that will make you furious. Our ancestors did not avoid nitrates. They drenched their meat in them. The salt they used was not the pure white sodium chloride we pour from a box today. It was unrefined sea salt, mined rock salt, salt with nitrate impurities. Those nitrates, once you pack the ham and wait, are converted by surface bacteria into nitrites. The exact same chemical people now reject as unnatural was naturally present in every traditional cure from Homer's time forward. The Amish used the same locally sourced salt that contained natural nitrates to cure their hams in Lancaster County root cellars. The same method protected the Spanish from botulism when they made Serrano. The same nitrate impure salt safeguarded Italian prosciutto. The old ways worked not because they were primitive, but because they were chemically identical to what we now call a controlled additive. The danger today is not that we added something new. It is that we purified salt so thoroughly that we stripped out the one compound that kept our forebears alive. And when a homesteader today rubs pure sea salt onto a pork belly and hangs it in a garage that fluctuates 5 degrees warmer than a root cellar, they are building a botulism trap that no ancestor would have recognized. The math has changed, but nobody is teaching the math. Between the 1930s and the 1950s, Three things erased the precise math of salt curing from American kitchens. First, manufacturers began refining salt to blinding white purity, stripping out the nitrates that had always protected cured meat. The label said pure, but what it really meant was defenseless. Second, the refrigerator arrived. Suddenly, every home had a machine that made preserving meat foolproof, and the deep knowledge of how salt concentration, humidity, and cellar airflow worked together was no longer something grandmother taught. It was just old. Third, commercial curing moved into factories where USDA inspectors controlled every gram of sodium nitrite, and the recipes that had kept family farms alive for centuries were dismissed as peasant traditions. By 1960, the majority of Americans had never seen a salt box or a root cellar. The knowledge didn't die everywhere. In Lancaster County, Amish families kept curing hams exactly as their ancestors had since the 1700s. They used salt sourced from local mines, salt that still carried natural nitrate impurities. They designed root cellars with precise ventilation to maintain 34 to 38 degrees, even in August. They understood that cold and salt are not optional extras. They are the two walls of a cell that botulism cannot escape. Remove either, and the door opens. And because the Amish do not record their knowledge in books or post it online, the rest of America assumed the old way was somehow mystical, when it was actually just physics and chemistry passed down at the dinner table. Then the homesteading revival caught fire. People wanted to eat like their great-grandparents, cure their own bacon, hang prosciutto, and they had YouTube. They watched videos of a homesteader rubbing sea salt on a pork belly, hanging it in a garage that fluctuated from 45 to 60 degrees, and calling it a traditional cure. The video got 1 million views. Nobody in the comments mentioned botulism. The algorithm saw engagement and fed it to 10 million more people. And the dangerous part is that most of them got away with it. Botulism is mercifully rare, statistically. So a homesteader can use the wrong salt and the wrong temperature for 5 years without a single symptom. And that survival becomes proof the method is safe. They post with confidence. I've been doing it this way for years, and I am fine. Carried luck, masquerading as earned wisdom. And the next person who copies that method might not be lucky at all. But wait, it gets even more twisted. Walk into any grocery store right now and pick up a package labeled Uncured Bacon or No Nitrates Added. That label is legally permitted because the manufacturer cured the meat with celery powder instead of synthetic sodium nitrite. Celery powder is naturally high in nitrate. During the curing process, that nitrate converts to nitrite, the exact same molecule. The bacon is cured identically to the pink salt method, but the label says no nitrates added because the USDA allows a loophole. Think about what that means. The very people who warn against chemicals are buying and eating nitrite-cured meat under a label that lies to them, while the homemaker who avoids pink salt in the name of purity is walking blindfolded toward a neurotoxin that her great-grandmother's impure salt would have stopped. There is one more number you need to know, and it is the number nobody on the internet will give you. The USDA safe minimum for whole muscle cured meats is 150 parts per million of sodium nitrite. More than that, and you risk nitrite poisoning. Less than that, and you risk botulism. A commercial operation has laboratory testing. A homesteader has a teaspoon and a guess, and one error in either direction can kill. Yet the Amish in Lancaster County never calculate parts per million. How? Because their method does not rely on a single chemical addition. It layers salt, smoke, temperature, and humidity into a system where botulism has no path. Every one of those layers matters. And if you understand how they built that system into a quarter-acre homestead with a shovel and a barrel of salt, you can preserve meat all winter without electricity and without fear. This is where the old way and the new understanding finally meet. Let me show you exactly how they built that system. First, you need the right salt, not sea salt, not pink Himalayan salt, pink curing salt, Prague powder number 1, which is sodium chloride mixed with 6.25% sodium nitrite. You use 1 teaspoon per 5 pounds of meat. That gives you roughly 156 parts per million inside the USDA safe window. The Amish did not have pink salt in a bag, but they had nitrate-rich mined salt that delivered the same molecule. You are not adding a chemical. You are restoring the nitrate that modern refining stripped out. Second, the cold. This is not optional. For a dry cure, you must keep the meat between 34 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit, not a garage that swings 10 degrees every afternoon, a root cellar, a basement corner in winter, or a dedicated refrigerator. If the temperature crosses 40 degrees, botulinum spores can germinate in the center of a ham where oxygen does not reach. The Amish maintained this temperature by digging into earth that stays a constant 50 degrees all year, then using passive ventilation to pull it down into the 30s through convection. You can replicate this with a cooler and ice if you monitor it daily. Third, the time. A dry-cured country ham needs at least 7 days in salt for a small cut, up to 60 days for a full leg. During that time, salt draws moisture out, the nitrite penetrates every fiber, and the meat undergoes chemical changes that produce the flavor of prosciutto. You know it is done when the ham feels firm, not spongy. Then you rinse it, hang it in a cool place with moving air, and let a pellicle form, a slightly sticky surface that seals the meat against bacteria. In a properly ventilated root cellar, that ham can hang for 18 months and taste better every month. Here is the detail that will change how you see this forever. The Amish never measured salt to the gram. They used the salt box method. You take a wooden box, pour in a layer of salt, place the ham skin side down, and pack salt completely around it until it is buried. The meat absorbs exactly what it needs. The excess salt forms a crust that falls away when you rinse it. This is not guesswork. It is physics. Osmosis draws salt into the meat until the salinity equalizes, and the thickness of the ham dictates the time, not the amount of salt. A 10-pound ham buried in 50 pounds of salt will not be saltier than one buried in 25 pounds. It will just cure faster. The surplus is insurance. Our ancestors were not careless. They were engineering with what they had. Now, if you already own a home, and you are thinking this only applies to people with a root cellar, stay with me, because a modern refrigerator set to its coldest shelf and a small fan can replicate every condition I just described. You do not need a farm. You need a temperature probe, a box of pink salt, and the willingness to let time do the work. And in the next part, I am going to show you exactly what to avoid, the 3 warning signs of a failed cure, and the one preservation method that requires no salt at all. And when you master those warning signs, the sickly sweet smell, the sticky slime, the dull gray color blooming on the surface, you are not just saving yourself from a hospital visit, you are carrying forward a lineage that almost went extinct. For 80 years, we outsourced all of this to factories. We convinced ourselves that salt and smoke were obsolete because a compressor hummed in the kitchen. But botulism did not get the memo. The Amish never forgot that the barriers are not machines. They are temperature. salinity, and time. Now you know them. If this knowledge matters to you, hit subscribe. Every person who learns this is one less person trusting a label that lies to them. I want to hear from you. What is the first cut you would cure? A pork belly for bacon, a whole leg for country ham, or something wild? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and in the next video, I am showing you the preservation method that needs no salt, no smoke, and no electricity at all, and the billion-dollar industry that would rather you never saw it.